the Feds. Insiders bringing accountability, integrity, and reform to a broken bureaucracy. At Feds for Freedom, we value constructive dissent and healthy debate. The views and opinions shared in today's episode are those of the speaker alone and do not express the views or opinions of the U.S. government or any other employer.
Welcome back to this week's episode of The Feds. I am Stephanie Weidle. Before we catch up with the deep state marauder Ivan Raiklin, let me encourage you to like, comment, subscribe to, and share our podcast. Only with your support can we continue advocating on your behalf in D.C. and in every government agency. Please visit our website, fedsforfreedom.org, to sign up for our newsletters and donate towards our mission. Today, I am joined by Ivan Raiklin, also known as the Secretary of Retribution and Deep State Marauder. Ivan is a constitutional attorney and former Green Beret who spends a significant amount of time in D.C. asking questions of the invisible government, the ones who work behind the scenes to keep the establishment machine running. He is a vital component to the pressure needed to slow down the deep state and hold the government accountable to the Constitution and to the people who it serves. Ivan, thank you so much for joining me in the studio again. It's really good to see you.
Very prescient introduction. I like that. Very precise. Retired Green Beret, I like to say.
Okay, retired Green Beret. Well, thanks, Ivan.
Thanks for having me back. So
last time we talked a lot about what the deep state is and very specific names on your deep state target list.
Yes.
This time I want to really take a pulse check on some of the greatest cover-ups that we are seeing happen right in front of us and the deep state's actions surrounding them. So COVID, elections, January 6th, Epstein. And we might even get something in about the Religious Liberty Commission and what just went down there. So,
all right, interview complete. You hit it all.
So, in your opinion, how are the investigations moving along with COVID origins and the way in which the governments around the globe responded?
All right, so according to my standard, it's insufficient, it's unacceptable, it's pathetic, right? And the reason why is because you have elements of this current administration also complicit in making sure that there is no transparency and there is no accountability related to COVID. Why is that, many people ask? Well, when you go down the rabbit hole, you have to go all the way back to, I don't know, Event 201. Who was involved in that? Avril Hines, I believe, of the DNI. That later became the DNI for Mr. I call him the head of the Biden criminal syndicate, Mr. Joseph, dementia patient, right? The AutoPen administration. So, again, without going into too many details on the names, you start with that in 2019, 2020, and then all of a sudden you have a COVID task force that's based out of the White House. It's headed up by Mike Pence and Jared Kushner. And so if Jared Kushner's fingerprints are all over the policies related to the shutdowns of the government that led to the illegal election of 2020 and 39 states because non-legislative actors in states ran their elections in a new rule framework that violated the U.S. Constitution, why would Jared Kushner want that to be investigated? Why would Mike Pence want that to be investigated? And so you see that how it gets too close to this White House as well in order to go after the transparency of COVID. And then also, why would Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson, who are known major contributors to both media outlets of the mainstream and political campaigns across the left and right, why would they want to allow those that they donate to investigate their own role and maybe, let's just call them mistakes at best, which we know they weren't mistakes. I mean, at some point, you realize that when the CDC says that tens of thousands are dying as a result of consuming your product, you may want to pull it off the shelf. So the short answer is you have all these forces across the entire mainstream political information landscape that want to make sure that there is no COVID transparency and there is no COVID accountability because they themselves would be the ones to be held to account. And I have a whole category of names under that rubric of who should be held to account. I mean, I think
can
you
name
and your organization and Feds for Freedom knows exactly some of those names. And just for shorthand, I would start with Jared Kushner. I would start with Mike Pence. And then downstream from those two, then you go into the Albert Bourlas that were recently in the White House. Why were they in the White House? I would suspect that you would have to look into his relationship with Jared Kushner and Miriam Adelson and Susie Wiles and Brian Ballard and Pam Bondi, who represented Pfizer in Florida. So when you connect those dots, it becomes more and more clear that while we did upgrade with this administration from a belligerent, illegitimate, Chinese-controlled Biden criminal syndicate, we went from a tyrannical regime to a coward, not as weaponized regime against us, but we still need to continue to upgrade and go beyond that in spite of them existing in our political conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So a lot of Republicans are complicit in the White House, this Congress, this House, this Senate, members in the political ecosystem were complicit in what we saw that resulted in the COVID complete debacle. From the lab incident that was funded by Fauci, ties to the CIA, right? And then from there, your original question was like, where are we at in terms of that investigation? My sense, because I talk to enough people in our government, former and current, in a way that I can ask them things without them having to disclose anything unlawfully, because I spent 25 years in the system. So I kind of know how to ask it without violating any rules, so that it's answered without violating any rules, so that I can get sufficient context to tell you that we have barely enough individuals that are in the system that if I were to name their names, they would no longer be in those positions to expose COVID-Con. And I think there's an increasing number of those that are in the system, outside the system, and with the First Amendment allowing to flourish, it ebbs and flows, right, on X, on Rumble. I think we will ultimately get the truth out as far as the transparency component of COVID, and then it will take the next administration that is not tied at all to the current administration, mostly, that will punish everyone involved in COVID, to include elements of this administration.
So you think accountability is on the horizon, but we will not be seeing it within the next 3 years?
I don't say never, or I just say it will be a much harder proposition to do that under the current climate with those currently in their positions, unless the fast track option is if Elon Musk decides to say, you know what, I'm going to go with the nuclear Ivan Raiklin option. And that nuclear Ivan Raiklin option is what he has for evidence in his Twitter 1.0 holdings. Remember that Twitter employees communicated with the previous government through a portal with the CIA, with the previous DNI, with the FBI, with the DHS's CISA, Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, as well as via Slack, as well as via emails, as well as via Twitter itself through direct messages. So imagine, and then also the internal deliberative documents of the legal team of Twitter, who was pretty much headed up by James Baker, the former general counsel of the FBI, that authorized the Russia spying operation on the Trump campaign and his affiliates. So if Elon Musk decides, you know what, I'm going to release the Fauci files that I have. I'm going to release all of COVID, meaning, you heard of the name Terry Adirham?
Yes, of course.
She has a Twitter account. She used her and uses her direct messages, okay? There's geotag location data associated with her Twitter account. Same thing with John Brennan. Same thing with James Comey, with Peter Strzok, with every single person that I listed on the deep state target list that has a Twitter account. That was the purpose of creating that list, is to identify the operations over the last 12 years of deep state activity, corruption, treason, and then see who has a Twitter account so that we can literally give it an easy button list to Elon to make the decision and say, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and expose it all. And I think in light of we're in the season of transparency with Epstein files, we're getting there. I think it would be nice for my 50-year birthday, Elon Musk on February 29th, which doesn't exist this year. So maybe by March 1st, it would be nice for Elon Musk to go ahead and release what I called last year, a year ago, the mother of all Twitter files. Actually, over a year ago now. And when I say mother of all Twitter files, it really means all blackmail evidence that he has from Twitter communications, internal, external, and cross communications, on every member of the government, in the executive branch, in the legislative branch, House and Senate, and their staff. And then uses little Grok AI to figure out which statute was violated based on those communications in relation, and which jurisdiction to lay that evidence, by what county, by what state, and then also deliver it publicly so that, because Pam Bondi won't do anything, America will have to do it. Meaning, there are citizens arrest statutes out there. There are things that, let's just say, Americans will take the risk of actioning a threat on their own, in line with the right for inherent self-defense, okay? So I think, as an analyst, I assess you will start seeing the more this administration does not hold people to account, the longer they take, the more America will do it for them.
Yeah.
And use your imagination what that means, and I'll say yes. Whatever you come up with an idea, I will say yes, that could potentially be one option.
I was going to ask, if the government right now cannot be transparent and hold these actors accountable, then how do you suggest we go about getting accountability?
Whatever's humanly possible, that is the range of options that we have. Now, I still try to stick to legal, moral, and ethical.
Of course.
But it is a contract. If one side of the contract is completely violating their role and responsibility, it becomes increasingly difficult for the we the people side of the contract to allow them to continue to violate our contractual relationship between we the people and our government that we placed in.
When you were last here, you were talking about the mother of all Twitter files as well. And it has not yet come out. So what does that say about Elon Musk, in your opinion?
Well, he said it directly and publicly on Joe Rogan's podcast, where he said, if I were to tell you of the ways that the corruption and blackmail and all this occurs, he risks his, he said, I think he used the words, it doesn't extend my life expectancy. And so it comes down to it. How do we motivate, convince in a genuine good faith manner that Elon Musk, it's his risk to take to move in that direction. And so, like, how do we de-risk that from him would be maybe one thing that we, as just Americans, can consider. How do we make it so that it is palatable for him to go ahead and release all this blackmail? And we might be at an inflection point right now that on one side, I'm going to slightly pivot. On one side, this is how I view this. You have, maybe I shouldn't go here yet. I will. The Epstein files to me represents one operation of potentially even more of that style and caliber of our highest level national security, like intel services within the U.S. and maybe, and foreign partners, obviously, Israel, possibly MI6 Britain, that create a scheme to blackmail and leverage the highest level influencers of our nation and other nations in business, in politics, in tech, etc., right? And so they use that coupled with their money to control White Houses, to control administrations, to control Congress. So like I said before, in the last illegitimate regime, my assessment was primarily influenced and controlled through money coming from the CCP, obviously Ukraine. I mean, I was on the Ukraine crisis team in 2014. That first 10% for the big guy deal was with Ukraine when Biden was the failed vice president, right? And was deployed to Ukraine to run that scheme on behalf of Brennan and Barry Hussein, right? And the cabal. That's on the Democrat side. On the Republican side, you effectively have at the very top, before Elon came in, okay? I'll talk about him next, but before Elon comes in, Sheldon and Miriam Adelson were and are the biggest donors of the Republican brand over the last 10 plus years, during that basically same time frame from 2014, okay? So if they're the ones that are investing and purchasing one political party to the tune of $600 million over that time frame, and for Donald Trump, $250 million, $250 million, that's not influence money from my perspective. That's outright purchasing capacity. I think many people would agree when you compare that, when you're the highest donor, right? But
and for those who aren't tracking, who are the Adelsons?
Right. So the Adelsons have, if you look it up, they gain their wealth through casinos in Las Vegas. So you can imagine what that involves. Okay, Las Vegas is the only jurisdiction, I believe, in the United States where what is legal?
Prostitution?
That's what I heard as well, okay? And they would own, I think they own one of the biggest hotels, okay? And what's an easy way to launder money without a good trace? I'm not saying it happened. I'm just telling you gambling is probably a really effective and easy way to do that, right? So whatever. I'm just throwing that as a potential. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. So in that framework, and then coupled with you asked me who they are, according to Donald Trump, President Trump, in his speech in Israel last fall, he said that Miriam Adelson is more loyal to Israel than the United States. That's his words.
She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say. We love you. Thank you, darling, for being here. That's a great honor. Great honor. She's a wonderful woman.
He says that she's more loyal to Israel than the U.S., and he gave stories when he was at the White House Hanukkah celebration in December of last year, stating that when Sheldon would call, he would say to Donald that, hey, Donald, I need to come see you right now. And he would, President Trump would say, well, I'm president right now. Can we do it tomorrow? And Sheldon would come in that day because he said, oh, only 15 minutes, and it ended up being 2 hours, right? So that's evidence to me of the level of influence that $250 million gives you, right? So when you put this together, back to who are they? So she was born in Palestine, so I think it probably irks her when somebody says she's Palestinian because she predates Israel, right? But it's true. She was born in Palestine. But she is, I believe she's a dual citizen, U.S. and Israel. And Donald Trump says she's more loyal to Israel, but she's also his biggest donor until him and the husband, but he's passed since. And so now it's only her. Elon Musk, during the 2024 cycle, I think was the first time where somebody donated more to the Republican Party and to a Republican candidate for president than the Adelsons in the last decade when he donated his large amount. And so to contextualize it, because we wanted to talk about like my grade or assessment of this administration this first year in, is we started off really well because you had three major spheres of influence influencing personnel and policy in this White House, in this administration. January 20th, it included all three until May 31st. It was Elon Musk, Charlie Kirk, and Miriam Adelson. Okay? So on May 31st, when Sergio Gore, with others, who I'm still trying to figure out, pushed Elon Musk out, and you can probably guess who those others are based on their public rhetoric. What would be your guess? Who are some of the most vocal people in voices in America that are very anti-Elon Musk, that Elon Musk has recently been attacking for having their names in the Epstein file? There is a gentleman that was in a spat with Elon Musk for the H-1B visa issue, etc. His name's been dropped in the Epstein files. His name is Steve Bannon, okay? And so he's going to have to address that on his own. We'll see how that works, but everyone can be the judge of that.
Yeah.
I will say that early on we saw Doge, we saw exposure, we saw transparency, we saw all of that stuff that was going to be implemented, but then Elon Musk was thrown out. And once that happened in June, you saw a screeching halt plateau of what this administration wanted or ran on. Accountability, transparency, justice, right? And so then you had only two key drivers into promoting policy into the White House. One, Charlie Kirk, Turning Point, and he influenced HR, who was coming into the admin, and that sort of mindset and ethos, based on Charlie had a donor class separate from the Adelsons, okay? And then you had Miriam Adelson. So then what happened on September 10th? September 10th is when Charlie was exterminated before the whole world to see. Now, we can argue about who and what and how, but from a strategic political influence into the White House perspective, how I see it, is you're now down to really one driver influencing now the totality 100% of policy in this White House through her surrogate, Susie Wiles, on behalf of Miriam Adelson. This is my assessment, and the indicators are so clear to me. If there's evidence to the contrary, I haven't seen it, and no one's been able to provide it. The only response to that is name-calling, okay? Which usually is not a very solid argument, okay? So if Miriam Adelson is driving all policy, and she is, according to Trump, more loyal to Israel than America, and she has donated the most, essentially, to Donald Trump and the other two influencers into the White House, Elon and Charlie, are gone, who is this White House working for? Mm-hmm. I think I answered the question.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are. People are seeing that more and more, and you're starting to see that play out and manifest across all conversations, to include the very conversation that you want to ask me about, about the event that you attended.
Yeah. Well, the Religious Liberty Commission.
Please explain.
Oh, okay. And then we're going to go back to Epstein.
And I want to answer this. I always like to answer this in a constitutional, America-only, secular manner.
Yeah. I think it's important that there's no side being taken right now. That we're just talking about what we saw, right?
What we observed.
What we observed. So on Monday was the Religious Liberty Commission hearing on anti-Semitism. I went because someone was going to be talking about their religious liberties being violated through their refusal to get the COVID shot. And she was a New York City worker. But before that, there were multiple panels of Jewish leaders throughout the country getting together saying our religious liberties have been violated and here's how. Throughout multiple panels, I think there were 3 of them, I heard similar language being used. Say we all need to get behind Israel, talking about influencers, dangerous language that influencers were using to sway Americans and sway their opinion in this matter. And they never said any names, but Carrie Prejean-Buehler, who I had been very much in contact with because we've been trying to get federal employees into the hearings,
Yep.
asked the question basically, just because I am not Israel first, I do not agree with the Israeli government, does that mean that I am an anti-Semite? And you can see clips of this.
Yep, I saw that.
Completely gone viral. And she asked this in many different ways. That was her initial question. And as she went on, she delved into other realms surrounding that with Charlie Kirk. But that initial question was an excellent one. The answer she was given was yes. They would agree. And I think 2 people said yes, that they would consider her an anti-Semite because she did not throw her support behind the Israeli government. I was shocked that that would ever be said. And there were hecklers in the audience. One was excused from the audience. I was thinking, what am I seeing here? And how is it that we've gotten to the place where there's this divide, saying that you are a Jew hater because you don't agree with the Israeli government? It doesn't make sense. It's not common sense. What is going on, Ivan?
I think I would ask this question of the gentleman if I was in that crowd more precisely. I would ask him, what would you consider someone that loves every single Jew on the planet except for 3? And the 3 that I'm referring to would be Miriam Adelson, Jared Kushner, and Benjamin Netanyahu. What would you call that? And that will be very telling to everybody. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, why those 3?
Thanks. Great question. Well, let's go back. I kind of set the stage a little bit. Who do you think the liaison is to coordinate all communications and efforts between the White House and the head of the Likud party in Israel?
I have no idea.
Would you think that Jared Kushner kind of looks like it?
Oh.
Really looks like it?
I have
if
no
it
idea.
walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, what is it? It's Jared Kushner. So then when you start to scrutinize that and you ask yourself, Ivan's starting to make a little sense. He's saying that after September 10th, you saw MAGA transition into America Second at best.
Was it really after that point?
Let's step through the logic. Let me give you some indicators. When did Bill Gates, Albert Bourla, and Mark Zuckerberg have a nice dinner in the White House with Susie Wiles? Oh, and I think Donald Trump was present as well. That was after September 10th. Okay. Wait, when did the physician for Donald Trump announce via press release that Donald Trump got his booster shot? That was after September 10th. It was on October 10th, precisely. Okay. What about, when did Miriam Adelson, Susie Wiles, Chris LaCivita, I'm sorry, Donald Trump's Truth Social announced endorsement of Democrat COVID criminal Andrew Cuomo. Was that after September 10th?
Mm-hmm.
You see a trend there?
Oh, yeah. And we were all questioning.
Am I just a whack job for listing facts that occurred after September 10th? They have no correlation whatsoever to each other, right? Or maybe they do have a correlation to each other. Instead of endorsing a Republican that won the nomination in the New York City mayor's race, no, Miriam, Susie, Chris LaCivita, I guess. Maybe not them, but maybe Donald Trump is the one that endorsed them.
Well,
Why?
We were told
To protect the COVID narrative. And oh, by the way, this was the day after. Remember, Andrew Cuomo admitted on live TV that he was responsible for the deaths due to his policies of nursing home patients.
Right.
And that's how many have to die for it to be considered genocide? Do you know what that number is?
No.
I guess that needs to be litigated, right?
We were told that it was to keep.
And Donald Trump endorsed it. So it goes back to the question of why are we getting no transparency on COVID and accountability? I think I made a pretty solid argument, and it's up to Mike Pence, Jared Kushner, Donald Trump, Susie Wiles, Pam Bondi, and Miriam Adelson, and Jared Kushner, and Albert Bourla to tell us. And I think we know the answer. And what's the common thread between those that I just mentioned? You want to go to the next topic, Epstein files?
Maybe we should. The files were not released until Massey put together this bill to release the files, and he was completely attacked by Trump. And then Trump actually signed the bill. The congressmen are given 2-hour time slots monitored to go and look at the files, to thumb through them. And
at 145 N Street Northeast,
and
Washington,
you have been
D.C., 20002, if you want to look it up, and if you want to join me outside, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., Monday through Friday. Yeah,
and
absolutely. So you can monitor which members go in and out, laud those that do, and those that don't, guess what? There's something coming for you.
Yeah, what is so in your opinion, what will be the implication of the people in those documents being exposed?
So I'm going to put my modest, non-hyperbolic, kind of calm, cool, collective hat on, okay? So
That's how we like you, Ivan.
Let's do that way. Even if we assumed that everything in those files and FD 302s and all the reports that are being released is true, which that might not be the case because these are just people reporting, right? It could be fabrications. It could be,
Right.
But let's just assume it's all true. It still doesn't meet the burden of a crime beyond a reasonable doubt, right? But that's not. This is political, right? Primarily. The brand Epstein has such a negative connotation to it that any and all relations, like if you were to pull up my name and it was Jeffrey Epstein was calling me bad for exposing corruption and thus in the Epstein files because he was in an email telling someone else that I'm like the worst guy ever in the history of humanity because I'm exposing him, people would still use that and say, oh, Ivan's in the Epstein files, right?
Absolutely.
By the way, I'm not in any way, shape, or form.
Right. Well, and that's
But you see where I'm going with that, right?
Yes.
So that's one side of the argument. So I guess on one side, you could argue that like it's all noise and let's get on with it. I think that's the best case scenario argument, I think, for this White House on why they're just trying to like, all right, you know what? We've done more than every other administration. We've already released $3 million. We're on our way in good faith, trying to get all the Epstein files released. Just relax. We're getting there. I think that's the best argument, good faith. But the ship has sailed on that argument, I think. Because let's go back. Let's give more context to how you opened it up with the Epstein question, if I may. We have, remember, after September 10th of 2025, after Charlie Kirk was murdered and Elon's out of the White House, you have one unipolar influence vector into this White House. These are my words and my assessment. If anybody else has others, go ahead, by all means, provide it. So then you have Thomas Massie with 3 other Republicans, because at the time it was a 4 Republican majority. So in order for there to be enough votes to pass any legislation, you have to have 4. Well, who are those 4? A lot of people forget about the other 4. They just blame Massie on everything, right? You got 3 ladies that are actually stepping up to get the truth and transparency out. Marjorie Taylor Greene was 1, Lauren Boebert was number 2, and then Nancy Mace, number 3. Okay? So what happened? Donald Trump, for whatever reason, and I have some evidence, I guess, based on other people's statements, we'll get to, is Donald Trump did not want that Epstein release petition to pass. So what did he do? He contacted Marjorie Taylor Greene and said, please don't vote for it. It will hurt a lot of my friends, according to Marjorie Taylor Greene.
I'm not standing with the government. I don't support the cover up of all of this stuff, whatever it may be. And the president got mad at me, and he's told me, and I've said this multiple times, he told me his friends would get hurt. And
on one side, like I just said, it could just mean that Epstein communicated with a lot of people. He's like, you know, you have people that are leaders in their own right, that are legitimate business tycoons. They're you have to talk to a lot of people, right? Whether it's like even on the legal side of, I'm sure like there were probably days in Epstein's life where minutes or hours in his life where he was not conducting illegal activity, right? Like when he's sleeping, like this, right? And just as a reality of life.
Yeah.
And so, but by virtue of having your name associated with them, you could say that, yes, it will hurt them politically. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't create legal risk. It just creates political risk and problems. So best case scenario, Trump is trying to protect that, okay? Just to give him a benefit of the doubt. Just be honest about it instead of being like a hater or whatever. But that might be more. And based on what Marjorie's indicating, she seems like it's a lot more. And she has had, let me put it this way. I've never directly communicated with President Trump in any way, shape, or form by design. Not in person, not by voice, not by email, phone, text, any mode of communication. Pigeon, right? Nothing. Passenger, what do you call them? Marjorie has. And so if she's telling the truth, which I have no reason to think that she's not telling the truth because she's taking on a lot of risk to do this, I have to take her as a credible source. In addition to that, Lauren Boebert was called by the president with Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, sitting in the Situation Room at this time when they were trying to block the Epstein file petition release. Lauren Boebert is called in and asked, can you please not vote for the discharge petition? Because all they needed was one of the 4 to not vote for it. And what did Lauren Boebert do? She's like, no, I have to vote for this. About the transparency, right? So once that happened, the White House didn't even bother to reach out to Nancy Mace because Nancy Mace is a survivor of her own right. And I think that was too risky of a move to ask her to do that because it would have backfired, I think, massively because she doesn't give a flip on this topic, right? So it was too high risk. And so when Lauren Boebert left the Situation Room, said she was going to vote for it, that's when you saw Donald Trump's Truth account saying, oh, I want every Republican to vote for the discharge petition. Yeah, because you have no option now, bro, because it's going to pass. So you're trying to save face. And on one side, Trump and Chris LaCivita, who runs the Republican Party on behalf of Miriam Adelson's money, if I didn't fail to mention that, are the ones behind the attacks on Massey, because let's face it, why do people hate Massey? Or why does Trump hate Massey? Why does Chris LaCivita hate Massey? Here's my understanding on why.
Most of the establishment hates Massey.
Here's why. Who was the only member of Congress that voted and demanded during the CARES package, the COVID relief package, demanded everybody vote in person in 2020 in Congress for the biggest transfer of wealth tax steal of the American public? It was Thomas Massey, because they were going to do it by proxy vote and just acquiesce to the whole COVID con and the electoral heist, etc. So that's one strike for Thomas Massey, because he was trying to defend the Constitution. The second strike on Thomas Massey, and it goes against the whole, right, the COVID cabal,
Yeah.
the money-making scheme, because it's basically disrupting the legitimacy of the argument that, oh, you got 2 weeks to stop the spread, Mikey Pence, right? Next, you have strike two is when, wait, wasn't it Thomas Massey that's a pureblood? Meaning that he decided, you know what, I don't buy into this CCP-19 injection that's unsafe and ineffective, even if Republicans are saying it's also good, because they're making money hand over fist over that. Whether it's brought to you by whatever on Fox News, right? Number three, third strike is he doesn't take any money from Miriam Adelson.
You're saying other people, other congressmen are taking big bucks from her?
Marjorie Taylor Greene didn't take money from Miriam Adelson.
Oh.
See the trend there? Others, they have a few dollar signs. If you look at their FEC reporting, the Federal Election Commission reporting on where they get their donations from. And so most of the other Republicans in the Republican conference, almost all, I think those might be the only two, that don't take money from Miriam Adelson. Is that a coincidence? I'll let the viewers decide if that's a coincidence or if that's a deliberate move. I think it was deliberate, okay? So that's three strikes. Technically, you're out, but there's more. Why else does Thomas Massey have strikes? Well, he went on Tucker Carlson and explained that most of his Republican colleagues have what's known as this is Thomas Massey's words, not mine. They have an AIPAC handler. What's an AIPAC handler? That stands for the American Israeli Political Action Committee. Okay? It is essentially, the mission statement is for, greater ties between America and Israel. I wonder where their money comes from. Does it come from, according to Donald Trump, the person that's more loyal to Israel than America, Miriam Adelson? Well, I'm not going to do all your homework for you. I'll let others take a look at that. Next strike. Who is the only member of Congress that was really looking into the pipe bomber on January 6th and exposing January 6th?
Massey.
Drum roll, Thomas Massey. Interesting. Is that another reason why these guys don't want Massey in office? Because he's exposing the entire corrupt scheme across COVID con, January 6th, and the America Second movement, if you will. And so it doesn't end there. Since everybody voted for the Epstein files release, except for Clay Higgins in the House and all the senators in the Senate, all 100, there's a dilemma. Because now the constituents demand, like the toothpaste out of the toothpaste bottle. How do we move forward on the exposure? Because like on one side I said you give him the benefit of the doubt. Todd Blanche is trying, he's releasing this and that. But on the other side is the law that President Trump himself signed stated that, hey, Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi, you have 30 days to release everything without any redactions except for the victims. They didn't meet that. So then how do you punish them for it? Because they didn't. So on one side, they're trying the best they can. On the other side, you miserably failed, which is all, like both can be true, right? That they're trying. And then the other side, if we give everybody the benefit of the doubt, like, but you're still failing. You're still redacting. And so that's why you see this fight and mess going on. But then what is this? Oh, members of Congress can go ahead and look at a terminal for 2 hours. 435 House members, 100 senators, 535 in total, 4 terminals for 9 hours a day. Like,
is that really
it's
a
slow
release?
walk.
Yeah, is that really a release?
And
No.
then some of these documents from the Southern District of New York are not even, they're actually redacted from there, so the DOJ can't even unredact them. So now you're starting, I was there yesterday at the annex where this information is accessible. Obviously, I'm not a member of Congress, so I can't go in, but I was there observing to see who's coming in and out, and I stumbled across, not one of those 4, or 3 now, Massey, Nancy Mace, or Lauren Boebert, who have already gone there and looked into the Epstein files. Unredacted. Mostly unredacted, I guess. Congressman Timmons from South Carolina. I'm like, whoa, there's a new one. Apparently his constituents are demanding that he take a look. And I suspect that that's going to apply to every member of Congress. So I would say that you're going to start seeing every member of Congress that is not in the Epstein files is going to be showing up, trying to look into it to save their political career going into the primaries that start on March 3rd. Primary season starts March 3rd in Arkansas, North Carolina, and Texas. And it goes from there March 10th in Mississippi, March 17th, Illinois. Got May, June, August, September are the last ones, September 15th in Delaware. So here's to Elon Musk and those trying to do the Epstein release. The more disclosures, transparency, and declassification that we can have on every single incumbent member of the House and Senate and state legislatures that's currently running for office in the primaries, we have to get their information out so that the voters and the constituents, we the people, can literally look them in the face and say, you know what? You better resign or else. And that or else is going to be that, my assessment, the unconventional ways in which to motivate a cleansing of our political system. Just like we saw with Tim Walz, right? He's not running for re-election. Why? Because the fraud was just exposed. There's no way they're going to win. We need to expose all the Epstein, all the mother of all Twitter files, any and all intel community, whether it's Tulsi Gabbard sitting on it, John Radcliffe. Like, the Epstein files, there's probably more damning information on Epstein at the CIA than there is at the DOJ, because the op was likely run by the CIA, but the criminalization or attempted criminalization of Epstein and his associates were done by the DOJ. So Nancy Mace, I was reading her tweets earlier today. She plans to go to the Southern District of New York on Monday to take a look at the redacted files, but in an unredacted fashion. And the following day on Tuesday, head over to the CIA just up the street here to see what they have. And that is brilliance.
But will they give it to her?
What do you think?
No.
And so what does she do after that happens?
Well, she puts out...
She goes on every single news show that will have her. And that will start to rile up America and those in the system to start to lean on John Radcliffe. And if he doesn't release them, then guess what happens, in my opinion? The next logical step is for the Epstein Files Transparency Act 2.0 to take place, where now it'll apply to John Radcliffe's CIA. And if he fails to do that, I expect impeachments to take place of Todd Blanche and Pam Bondi if they continue to slow walk, of John Radcliffe if he continues to slow walk, and if this president doesn't get behind the law that he signed into law, beyond reasonable to see that he could be impeached before November. Because there's going to be enough pressure by people that demand transparency to lean on Republicans, 3 or more, that they will apply the necessary pressure to ensure that Donald Trump compels his DOJ and his CIA to release it all, even if it does harm his friends. And if Mike Johnson doesn't want to do that, he will be the next casualty. He will be flicked like we flicked Kevin McCarthy, and we'll place a Speaker of the House that will ensure the release of everything. So that's kind of like, that's the chessboard I play with, and I like to see where we can move things around to make sure that we get there. Is it slow? Yeah, but we're moving the ball down the field.
We are. Remember Trump's first term, he said he's going to go into Washington, he's going to drain the swamp.
I'm here to be the catalyst for that.
What is your opinion of that now? Like, how do you view that statement? Did that age well, Trump saying, let's drain the swamp?
So if you're a glass half full person, meaning if you're in the administration, you're going to argue that, hey, look, President Trump was the first one. Like under President Trump's first term, he was actually the one that his DOJ went after Epstein. Right?
Yeah.
No one else did. So that's good, right?
Yeah.
His DOJ under Trump 2.0 is the one that's releasing the Epstein files. 3 million documents so far. We're continuing to we're giving access to members of Congress. What's wrong with that? We're doing awesome. Why are you laughing?
Because I'm not a congressman and I want to I want the government to be transparent with me, not just people within the government.
Well, that's
They're
a fair
accountable
point.
to me.
But guess what? You didn't give Donald Trump $250 million. So why should he listen to you, Stephanie?
Because I am an American citizen and collectively we got him in office.
Well, that sounds very anti-Semitic.
Oh, really?
See how they play the game?
Okay, explain that way. Ivan, seriously, explain that way of thinking. Because people actually do think that way.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So, when you get too close to the truth and you can't defend your stance of the argument, the go-to is the ad hominem attacks. And so where do we start? In order to shut someone down and for the low IQ observers on the sidelines to side with your side, the easiest way to do it is with the ad hominem or lies, right? Meaning, what was the religion that they were using? That first it was the CCP inspired.
Oh,
Biden laptops matter. BLM, right? Biden laptops matter. So they were using. If you're not funding and supporting that cause that the CCP influences, then you're bad, right? You're a bad American. If you don't support the COVID con, right, then it became the vaccines. Then you're a bad American. And the whole machine went after you if you didn't. So then that kind of passed.
churches going
and then
after
we pushed
you.
back against that. Then we pushed back against if you're not Ukraine first, you're a bad American, right? If you are, then what else did they go to? I'm trying to think. So, if you're not for spending all American taxpayer dollars on Ukraine, you're bad, Republican or Democrat. Mm-hmm. And then it went to, if you're not for funding unlimited Israel, you're bad. You're a bad American. Okay?
Yeah, this is very dangerous territory that we're getting into with this administration.
So if you go more nuanced, so like, I love that all this is happening. It's all for the public to see and hear. Donald Trump's own words, right? Mark Levin, giving basically Donald a nuggie saying, the first Jewish president in American history, right?
2 seconds. 6 years ago, I was up here, and I said, this is our first Jewish president. Now he's the first Jewish president to serve two not consecutive presidents.
Next thing you know is Donald Trump comes up and says, hey, Miriam, come up here at the same event. Why don't you come up here and say a few words? And she says, oh, I just talked to Alan Dershowitz.
Well, Mr. President, when you were in the Israeli parliament and you gave a speech and you saw me from far away, at that time I came with a scooter to the parliament just to hear you. I wanted to hear you live. And then you say, Miriam Adelson, and I stood for a second, but it was so painful, so I sat. Then you screamed, Miriam, stand up! And I wish you would have known, but I stood up and heard all your compliment, and thank you very much.
I saw you back there standing.
Yeah, you saw me.
She stood
Thank
up
you.
bravely.
And now I met Alan Dershowitz, and he said the legal thing about 4 more years, and I said, Alan, I agree with you, so we can do it. Think about it.
Alan's
and I
here
would be,
someplace. Where's Alan?
Alan is here, or he had a flight? Alan is here? Think about it.
Thank you.
Maybe I will be.
So, and then Donald Trump says, why don't you come up here? And then she gives a brief speech saying, oh, Alan Dershowitz just told me that there's a way for you to run for re-election, and I'd be happy to give you another $250 million, basically, she says. And then Donald Trump's like, yes, she's going to fund me another $250 million, right? So all that in the collective, to me, is blaring. Miriam controls the White House, right? And how does she control it? A lot of people say. Well, if she's the one driving a lot of money into the PACs that put him in the office, meaning the ones that Susie Wiles and Chris LaCivita ran, those two are her employees, effectively. Susie runs the White House on behalf of Miriam. Chris LaCivita runs the Republicans through the primaries and where that money goes with Miriam Adelson's money. And then when you do some more digging, you do a search on your favorite AI or search tool and ask who is the biggest funder of the Likud party in Israel, and it's Miriam Adelson. Who's the head of the Likud party in Israel? Benjamin Netanyahu. And so basically at the top you have Miriam, you have subordinates Bibi, Susie, Chris LaCivita, and the conduit between the two on a day-to-day basis is Jared. And so that's really, I think, who's running the things that are that create friction between those that are America second and America first, America only. That's the civil war and the friction that you see going on. And I haven't heard anybody explain it more precise than that, down to the individual level. Which part of what I said is a name-calling thing that I just called you, right? That now people are scared. Oh, you just called me that. Now everyone's going to hate me. I could care less what you call me. I'm going to bring receipts and call you out on it. The more someone comes after me, the more I'm going to flex back.
Yeah.
And that's why, I don't know, mutually assured destruction, bring it.
I want to be careful of our time together because I know you are a very busy person.
No. This is what I do.
So, election security. Something's going on in Arizona. And would you just explain what's going on regarding the elections?
Okay. So let's go back to 2020. They told us, so Chris Krebs, who headed up the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, he was appointed and brought into the administration back then by Mike Pence. Okay? He said it was the most safe and secure election ever in American history. And then I add this. It was the most pristine human endeavor ever known in human existence. Right? The 2020 election. Well, not so, right? As I've laid out numerous podcasts numerous times. And so 39 states ran their elections according to COVID rules that Jared Kushner and Mike Pence ushered in. 2 weeks to stop the spread turned into, let's change our election systems under non-legislative actors' rules to violate both state law and federal law and the Constitution. But I digress. But it is important. So what states were the contested states where there was the biggest shenanigans? Georgia, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Nevada, New Mexico, New Hampshire, Nebraska. We'll pause there.
It's a lot.
But we're only going to focus on a few, the first ones, right? The priority ones. So Georgia. What did we see a couple weeks ago in Georgia? Where the deep state completely went apoplectic. Remember?
You tell me, Ivan.
Well, according to Reuters, they pronounce it Reuters. They were concerned that the director of national intelligence was there at a raid in Fulton County, Georgia, with, I believe, the deputy director of the FBI, Andrew Bailey, one of the two deputy directors. I wonder why there are two. And so they got concerned. And guess who came out publicly and started getting really scared about that event? Mark Zaid. Who's Mark Zaid? One of the two attorneys, the lead attorney to defend the fake whistleblower during impeachment hoax 1, Eric Ciaramella, a CIA officer that was represented by Andrew Bacage and Mark Zaid, okay, and Mark Warner, the senior Democrat on the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence. What is the DNI doing on an FBI raid in the 2020 election ballots in Fulton County, Georgia? They got all scared. Keep in mind, Mark Zaid is the one that's been running the coup since 2017 against our constitutional order. And his co-counsel, Andrew Bacage, next thing you know, last week, says that Tulsi Gabbard is somehow not disclosing to Congress a whistleblower complaint of a client that he represents. So he's running the same playbook to try to go after Tulsi like they did to go after President Trump with the whistleblower. But that fizzled because it was a bogus complaint. What I'm getting at here is the deep state is locking arms to ensure that the ballots from Fulton County's 2020 election are not scrutinized, because there's been a pending litigation in courts down there led by Garland Favorito of Voter GA to try to get access to them to showcase that there are duplicates and the fraud, basically, of the ballots. So now we finally have them, and I suspect it's going to be very problematic to the mainstream narrative of what actually took place in Georgia, and that means it will start to implicate the current governor, Republican Brian Kemp, the current Secretary of State, Republican Brad Raffensperger, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, her little buddy. You heard of those names? No? So Fani Willis was the district attorney in Fulton County that went after President Trump and others as part of the criminal charges against him. Remember that? Maybe, maybe not. I guess not. Anyway, I know this at the encyclopedic level. I get it. But to summarize, since I'm losing you, I'm going to say this.
Yes, I think you're losing
the first place that I observe Tulsi and this administration going after is to prove that the 2020 Georgia election was completely fraudulent, to then reverse that. That will result in the reversal of a couple of impeachments that Donald Trump was part of, to nullify them. And then Arizona, same thing, to prove that the Maricopa County 2020 election was completely illegitimate and fraudulent. And what is that going to do? That essentially forces a change in the manner in which those elections are conducted, with public buy-in, coupled with the Save America Act that hopefully may pass to, I don't know, yesterday or today it may have passed.
And what, explain it?
It's a law that, it's ridiculous that we even are still talking about a law that requires you to be a U.S. citizen to vote in federal elections, okay? in elections. There's three types of federal elections. There's the president and vice president election under the Electoral Count Act and Title II U.S. Constitution's 2.1.2 article. There's a Senate election under the rubric of Article 1, Section 4 in the 17th Amendment. And then there's the House federal elections under the Article 1, Section 4. You would expect that you should only have U.S. citizens voting in those elections, right? Well, that's not the case, and that's why we're passing a law, because there's been fraud up to this point in non-American citizens voting across the board. So that's going to also usher in a more clean, better electoral system, okay? Makes sense? And hopefully all this happens in February, because this is the list of primary dates in 2026 elections for the federal House seats, the federal Senate seats in some states, and also hopefully the release of the Epstein and everything else is going to expose the candidates, particularly incumbents, or even candidates running in the 46 states that have elections in state House and state Senate and gubernatorial races. Again, starting March 3rd, which is a couple of weeks away. So all this is actually, the timing's pretty good. So there are some successes.
There are
amidst
successes.
all the consternation that we started off with, where we have a good contingent of America's second politicians. I mean, between America Second and America First, I think on average we're going to get closer to America First and then America Only.
Michael Fanone. So that name actually...
Yeah, I've heard of that name.
Yes. So
Remind me who that is?
So there was a viral video that went around the internet with you having an exchange with him in a Senate hearing, correct? House hearing. Okay.
Yeah, he was a VIP guest along with 3 other perjurers from the U.S. Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Department that were there handpicked by Jamie Raskin, who's the ranking member of that Judiciary Committee, and by Jack Smith, apparently himself, in that reserved section. So they were kind of the backbenchers for Jack Smith.
So would you explain who he is, what did he do, and what the exchange was about, and include the broader context of what actually happened on January 6th?
Sure. So Michael Fanone is the mouthpiece. He was a Metropolitan Police Department officer on January 6th in the counter-narcotics unit. And he was there on January 6th. And when you review his body cam footage, which I have, and I'm going to post another, I'm going to retweet it right now while we're speaking. Make it live. And when you look at that, which was just completed by Stop Hate, it actually compares his testimony, Michael Fanone, at the January 6th Select Committee that was headed up by Mike Pence's beloved Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi's beloved Benny Thompson. I call it the January 6th Fedsurrection Cover-Up Committee. In that committee, Michael Fanone was a witness, along with the 3 other officers that were also present at the Jack Smith hearing that we're talking about. So Michael Fanone's testimony essentially includes testimony that he was brutally beaten.
Lift him up! Lift him up! Sit down! Get him up! We love you guys! We love you guys!
By the mob, right? Everything that we saw over the last 4 or 5 years of articulation. But when you look at the body cam footage, that is a fabricate. Like the body cam footage is inconsistent with everything that Michael Fanone says. I think in lay terms we call that a complete lie. And since this is a family-friendly show, I'll say it's complete BS, right? Bogus, fabrication, lie, defamatory, etc., right? But the thing is that Nancy Pelosi directed MSNBC and CNN to promote Michael Fanone and that narrative that he was brutally beaten, that it was an insurrection, right? And Paul Ryan and Rupert Murdoch's Fox News also amplified indirectly Michael Fanone's message that it was an insurrection, right? That it was a riot. The body cam footage of him and his partner, Jimmy Albright, do not match anything with what he says about his experience on January 6th. So he being the singular mouthpiece comms guy for the insurrection narrative, when we expose that to the broader lemmings and normies of the world, they then now are ready to receive that, oh, you know what? If he lied and he's the spokesperson, the entire thing's a fabrication. That's why it's so important for me to go ahead and I haven't done it yet. I haven't filed it yet, but I will be filing a defamation lawsuit against Michael Fanone because he, in that hearing, said that I threatened his family and his children with specific threats that he claims. All a complete fabrication, exactly how he, in the similar manner that he fabricated for the last 5 years, what he experienced on January 6th. I mean, it was just bald-faced lie. I mean, there's not even a word to describe how much of a fabrication it is. Because what he alleged, I've never spoken to anybody, not him, not anybody, in public, in private, or even thought to even think what he alleged.
You had never spoken with him before?
That is inaccurate. Prior to that interaction, I had spoken with him twice. Speak means it's a two-way street. He didn't really, well, no, he did a little bit of it. So the first time I had met him was outside of the D.C. courthouse, and I actually posted all 3 engagements with him, the totality of it. Because the only time I've interacted with him is in person, and I recorded all 3 instances. Never communicating with him, phone, digital, social media, or anything like that. It was outside of the courthouse, and I asked him a few questions, and he was 20, 30 feet away, and I asked him, hey, Mr. Fanone, I have a few questions for you on, and you can watch that. It was the same style and demeanor that you saw me interacting with him at that hearing. Yeah. The second time I interacted with him was last year at the conference that he was attending, and I engaged with him, and the other 3 officers were at this event, and I asked him, I think it was Problem Solvers or something conference, at the same time another conference was going on, and I asked him, hey, Michael, can I invite you to lunch to hash out and compare notes on his understanding of January 6th and my understanding of the Fedsurrection and his role in it, okay? Well, he didn't take that too kindly, and so his Tourette's kicked in, and so he started laying expletives, etc. And it's all out there. I kept my cool, the whole time. And then the third time, which you saw. And so anytime he's confronted with somebody that does not comply with the insurrection narrative, he kind of responds how the mainstream has responded over the last several years. You don't want to comply with the forced consumption of the products, they completely go apoplectic against you. And for people like you and me, especially me, you could see in the video that, I'm not going to back down. Apparently he didn't get the message. But he got the message that day. And now that he acted the way in which he did with me, he has now elevated himself to the highest level of interest for me to make sure that the entire world knows his fabrications, and he will be punished for his defamatory language against me.
On Twitter, you have spoken very highly of Tulsi Gabbard, the Director of National Intelligence.
I wonder why.
And the efforts she has made at the beginning of 2025 to investigate all of these topics, really. Has she produced the answers in a path forward that is satisfactory to you?
So this is to those that don't understand our government as well maybe as I do. I judge people in this administration based on the authorities and the discretionary power and authorities legally that they have, okay? The Attorney General has a certain set of authorities. The President has a certain set of authorities. The Secretary of Homeland Security has some. The Secretary of War, the Director of National Intelligence. So if you take a look at the legal authorities of a position, and we'll use the Director of National Intelligence as one, and then see what the campaign promises were with the authorities of the position holder, along with any and all executive orders that are commensurate with those campaign promises, and then see how well that position has implemented the campaign promises and EOs, number one draft pick in this entire cabinet easily goes to Tulsi Gabbard. Why? Because what's within her authority? Can she pull people's clearances? Absolutely. Who has pulled the most clearances of anybody in this cabinet?
She has.
Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah. Who has fired the most number of people and wiped out the most number of people through her HR authorities across this entire cabinet? Tulsi Gabbard, based on my reading and understanding. Who has declassified and sent over information and criminal referrals, according to what's out there publicly, more than anybody in this cabinet? JFK files release, RFK files release, Martin Luther King files release. What else? We had the AHI. It looks like the AHI things are coming out. What is that called? Anomalous health incidents, according to Catherine Herridge. It looks as though we're getting there. The exposure of Russia hoax that was at a press conference. So on a consistent level, while Pam Bondi is out there with her binder brigade saying, I got the Epstein files, which are stuff that was released a while ago. She has no clue what she's doing. In a methodical, professional, systematic cadence, the Director of National Intelligence, without this spasmodic fanfare, is in a very deliberate professional tone, like a clock ticking. Release, clearance pull, firing, release, and guess who gets attacked the most? She does, by the deep state. And what does she do? Continues to respond in a very measured, warrior sort of Joan of Arc manner, and deflects from the Andrew Bakages of the world, one of the two lawyers we talked about earlier with Whistle, trying to go after her, the Mark Zaids, the Senator Mark Warners. Why? Because she is the most unleveraged, yet with the most holistic understanding of our governmental institutions across party lines of anybody. Remember, she did not run for re-election in 2020, so she has no fingerprints, or you can't lay any blame or benefit on her for the COVID con, effectively. She was the only one that voted constitutionally appropriately, in my opinion, during impeachment hoax 1. She voted present because that was an illegitimate impeachment proceeding. So those Republicans that even voted no on that impeachment didn't meet the standard because they legitimized through their vote the hoax that was being perpetrated by Adam Schiff, Andrew Bakaj, Eric Ciaramella, the Vindman brothers, Mark Zaid, and Adam Schiff, I think I already said, and Pelosi. So that's, and then going into, since she didn't run in 2020, that means she wasn't a congresswoman on January 6th of 2021. So her fingerprints are nowhere to be complicit in the events of January 6th. She's literally an independent arbiter of the truth. And it's like, okay, nothing, her name's not going to be anywhere in that. And so that's why she is the most, from a constitutional perspective, she is the most impactful official at the federal level to get to truth and transparency. She's not in a position to hold anyone to account except for those officers in the intelligence community. It is up to the Department of Justice to go ahead and prosecute. But one thing I will say, anybody, if she or anybody in her vicinity is listening in, the one thing that I could see improvement on, maybe one of the few areas, is that as these disclosures happen, it would be good for her team to send out to the appropriate state AGs, if not all of them, the same criminal referrals that are being sent over to the Department of Justice, if the law allows, through those declassifications. Because we're seeing that this Pam Bondi is doing nothing. So maybe we can leverage some of these state attorneys general to hold appropriate individuals to account, whether it's John Brennan in a Virginia court, whether it's James Comey, whether it's anybody on my deep state target list. And it would be nice for her to sit down with Elon Musk to coordinate legally, morally, and ethically all of his holdings in Twitter 1.0, all of Dana White's holdings as a board member of Meta for any messages in Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp that he could find on the members of the deep state target list, along with any holdings that she has within the intelligence community, and then compel John Radcliffe to do the same as the CIA director. That disclosure right there will be the maximum that we can do going into March, and that will force people to resign, and we can start upgrading from China, like removing China first Democrats and Republicans, Ukraine first Democrats and Republicans, Israel first Democrats and Republicans, based on the sheer exposure of all the fraud, corruption, and the illegalities and the relationships that a lot of it's going to tie back to Epstein, the election fraud, the COVID con, and all categories of my deep state target list.
If the average American citizen could do one thing to combat the corruption that we see in our country, what would it be?
For those that have one of these, it's called a phone. It's got data. It's got a camera. This thing right here, even if you have an old one, it has more capability than a network broadcast television channel had 20 years ago. Imagine that. You have more capability and reach just from this thing right here that most people have. And the way you do that is, for my friends that live in Ohio, what's the name of the place? I have to look that up because it's so important. I need to say it. If you live not too far from the following city in Ohio, you might want to just pay a visit peacefully, patriotically, legally, morally, and ethically to Les Wexner. Heard of that name?
Yes.
Co-conspirator, almost, I guess, co-conspirator with Jeffrey Epstein. And so let's take a look here. Let me go to the website. The website is property.franklincountyauditor.com. Okay? And if you go there, you can do a search to see what properties Mr. Wexner owns and their respective addresses. This is publicly available information. And you might be able to, I don't know, bump into Mr. Wexner to ask him some questions as you record those questions about his role and his relationships with Jeffrey Epstein, meaning you have to do some research as you confront him peacefully, patriotically, legally, morally, and ethically around his property, or maybe wait for him to exit, or any employee that works for him. What does that do to someone psychologically and his team as America starts to scrutinize him in person? Nothing unlawful. That shines a massive light. Because once you do that, whoever does it, and I see it, guarantee you I'm sharing that. And now 5,000 people see it, 10, 100,000, 1 million. And that motivates more people to scrutinize every single thing that that gentleman has done in his life. And then you start to consider, you know what, maybe I might just not buy anything from Victoria's Secrets anymore or any other business holding that he has. And just maybe I'm going to question every single person in his network, friends, family, etc., until we see some motion. Meaning, apply what I just said to you to every single person that is not being held to account by the Department of Justice to the standard that we desire. We have to hold them to account. And the way that we can do it within that legal framework is we have to maximally expose them to where they have to resign from whatever position that they're in. We have to degrade their, we may not be able to get to jailing them, but we have to weaken their position in society to the maximum that we can. And I think the most effective way to do that is through exposure. It's through education. Because think about it. If every single one of your neighbors is literally outside waiting for you every time you come in and out and is asking you things about criminal activity that you were involved in, it's pretty effective, I think. I mean, it's been effective for me.
And we all get to see it on your Twitter. Well,
we've already seen, let me use it as an example. People are like, oh, nothing's going to happen. Who has already resigned from their positions throughout the world based on some of these releases? It doesn't prove criminality. It's just the relationship with the Epstein file, the relationship with some, for example, the election fraud, that information that's going to come out, people are going to start to roll over. They're going to start singing. And so it requires that public exposure. We have to reverse all of the lies and censorship that was created based on the COVID con, the 2020 election heist, the January 6th Fedsurrection. And I can't remember her name right now, but Barry Hussein's former counsel, a former senior attorney for one of these big outfits in New York, just announced she's resigning. Why? Apparently, little spicy emails between her and Mr. Epstein. So that's a scalp.
Yeah.
That's a pretty major scalp. And why? It's because courageous Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and Thomas Massie, and growing by the day Republicans, know that the America's Second crowd, that's a losing proposition. They're seeing that play out. If you're on Twitter, on social media, you have Cenk Uygur. Cenk is he's kind of a leftist independent content creator, pretty influential. You're starting to see the independent content creators on the left and the independent content creators, quote, on the traditional right, agreeing full stop on this issue of transparency. And that means a majority of the populace, to the tune of 50, 60, 70% plus, when we agree on an issue, there's no option, because they have to make adjustments, the power structure at play. And so Miriam Adelson, you better start listening. And the more and more I mention her name, the more people are going to be thinking, if we can not support Les Wexner financially in his holdings, maybe we can do the same with Miriam Adelson, so that she doesn't have that much influence and control over the Republican brand. And instead, let's motivate folks like Elon Musk. And I get it. I don't agree with him on the H-1B stuff, but in a general sense, most of Elon Musk's holdings are in the United States. He made his wealth in the United States. His leverage, influence, and his interests are in the United States. Yes. I would rather have him having more of an influence based on his body of life experience and what he did and showed as the head of Doge in the first few months of last year. I would rather have somebody like him having more of an influence and role over my White House and my executive branch and legislative branch than somebody like a Miriam Adelson.
These are all things to think about. Ivan, thank you so much for joining me today. This has been a very informative podcast, and we've covered a lot.
Yeah, just a tip. Just the superficial layer, the wave tops.
Well, I encourage everyone to go onto Twitter and check out Ivan. He has a lot to say. Thanks, Ivan, for coming.
Thank you, Stephanie, for having me once again.
Thanks so much for tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe to, and share our podcasts. I'll see you next week.